Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of AM Sports Talk with ZP. My name is Zan Piarli. I'm your host. Joining me today is a special guest from Atlanta, Georgia, Ben Ladner in the house. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, man. It's good to be here. I've been looking forward to this for since you asked me to be on. And, we've been trying to get me on for a little while, and with schedules and classes and stuff didn't quite work out until this morning, so I'm pumped to be here.
Yeah, so Ben is a big Falcons fan, Hawks fan, Braves fan. I was trying to get him on the day after the Super Bowl to talk about his team, but unfortunately wasn't able to make it. But now he's here, and we're going to talk a lot about Atlanta stuff and NBA and his whole reaction to the Super Bowl. So, Ben, first, I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do here at Indiana, and
Yeah, I'm a journalism major, very involved in the whole sports media scene, just like you, and I'm sure just like everyone who's come on this podcast. I broadcast men's basketball for WIUX, do a couple outside writing gigs with a couple of websites, and just try to, I read all the emails Dr. Clavio sends out, just try to get involved in as many of those opportunities as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And also today we have another special guest in the podcast booth. My roommate, Spencer Davis, is taking pictures for his visual communication class. So we're famous, Ben. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, we've got some big time exposure here.
Yeah.
Even people outside the studio.
I know. Everybody.
Passing by, taking pictures of us, like shooting our podcast. This is great.
Yeah, so if you see Spencer, get into the camera real quick. Yep. See this guy? He's got his camera.
You'll be hearing a lot of camera clicks today.
He's got the camera. So if you're gonna watch the video, I'm gonna put on YouTube after. You can see Spencer taking pictures of us. Or if you don't really care, then talk to me about growing up as a Falcons fan and a long drought without a championship. Still, unfortunately, no championship. Yeah. Just growing up and then this past 2 weeks ago, leading up to the Super Bowl and everything. Just give me your experience.
Yeah, so you said at the top, always been a diehard fan of all three Atlanta teams. I wasn't so into the Thrashers when they were down, but that's a different story. The city of Atlanta has not won a title since 1995 when the Braves won it. That's the only championship in the history of the city. They had not appeared in a championship game since '98 until this year. So for the Falcons to even be in the Super Bowl was a really big deal, and you could really feel it, like being back in Atlanta. Just like the energy around the city was really, really big. But when I was in high school, the whole reason I went down was because when I was in high school, my friends and I, we had this thing that we called Falcons Club, which was not a very exclusive club. Basically, we went to this one guy's house every Sunday and watched the Falcons game at 1 o'clock or 4 or whenever it happened to be. Right. And so immediately when they beat the Packers in the NFC Championship, we were all texting each other we were like, Falcons Club for the Super Bowl, we're going to do it. So a few of us made it down there, not the whole group, obviously, because everyone's at school, and that's a tough time to get down in the middle of the semester. But it was me and a couple other guys, sitting in the same old living room on the same old couch that we used to, watching the game. So that was a really fun experience, and especially in the first half, it was the most fun I've ever had watching a half of football, and then the second half was basically the exact opposite. But yeah, it was really great being back in town. I think, I felt like as someone who's, as a native of the city, as someone who's a diehard fan of all the teams of the city, I felt like I had to be, if the team was going to have a chance to break that drought, I felt like I had to be in the city when it happened.
No, absolutely. I understand completely. I grew up in the St. Louis suburbs. I was a diehard St. Louis Rams fan whenever they were there. I used to go to every game, or pretty much every game with my buddies, and we would have, I guess, some sort of Falcons Club thing, but instead of going, we'd pretty much all meet together for road games, but during home games, if you could buy a ticket on StubHub like the morning of the game for $6.
No way.
Yeah, you can literally, I could get on StubHub like Sunday morning, buy the cheapest ticket possible, and then it didn't matter what section it was. We'd all sit up
we'd all group together.
Yeah, we'd all group up in the same section, top row of the dome. We didn't care. We would just get rowdy, and it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that's also a major reason why they left is because we were able to do that.
Exactly. I was about to mention, I don't want to bring it up. I thought it might be too sensitive, but yeah, that seems like a reason why they would leave the city.
If you can buy a ticket for $6 the morning of and then just sit wherever you want, I think that's a pretty valid reason to
going down. And when it went to overtime, that's kind of when I knew, like, they had all the momentum. If they win the coin toss, we're not going to be able to stop them. And, obviously we didn't.
Yeah, so since we're on the topic of overtime, I mean, ultimately, yeah, the Falcons did blow it, but if they would have won that coin toss, they could have easily went down the field and scored first.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the NFL should change the overtime rules, especially in the playoffs? Because a coin toss isn't necessarily, I don't think it's the most fair thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I guess the premise, sort of the thing about overtime is that if you do get to overtime, it's almost like you could flip a coin to decide the winner. That's sort of, I guess, part of the appeal is that it's basically like a coin toss. But to have a literal coin toss, I mean, especially when your team's on the losing end of it, is definitely, to me, sort of an unfair way to do it, especially in the playoffs because there's so much on the line. And in the Super Bowl, to have your entire season come down basically to a coin toss. Is really, really tough to swallow. So I would like to see it, one possession each, and then after that go to sudden death.
Right.
Give each team one possession, and they've gotten closer to that by making it you have to score a touchdown for you to win in sudden death. But yeah, I think one possession each, and then you go to the old school sudden death rules. I think is probably the better way to do it.
Or even this, I mean, just think about what if they played like an extra 10-minute overtime period? I mean, in every other sport, in basketball, hockey, where there's timed quarters like that, you think about it, there's no sudden death.
Right.
They play till the clock runs out. So do you think that would benefit football? I mean, even if it's like 10 minutes instead of 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, give each team like enough time for roughly a 5-minute drive. Yeah. And that's still 10 minutes. I think is still going to benefit the team that wins the toss a lot because you can eat up 6 minutes on your opening drive. But yeah, I think that's far more fair because you're right. Like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have 4 timed quarters, 15 minutes each, and then in overtime you're like, oh yeah, there's no clock. You just play it.
Yeah. Let's shift our attention towards the NBA. Last night, the Celtics and the Bulls played a pretty high-intense game. Fourth quarter, Isaiah Thomas balled out like usual. Yeah. But in the end, Jimmy Butler put up a shot with about 2 seconds left, and a costly foul on Marcus Smart was called. If you didn't see it, go back, look at it. But Marcus Smart barely touched Jimmy Butler's elbow, and there was a foul called. And the Celtics thought they had won, going into the All-Star break, being one win back from Cleveland in that Eastern Conference spot, but no. Chicago gets to the line. Jimmy Butler hits 2 free throws, and then they end up losing that game. You saw that game, correct?
Yeah.
And what did you think of the call? I mean, I thought it was called late, in my opinion.
It wasn't a foul, and it was called late. Yeah. If you watch the ref, he watches the ball.
Exactly. He watched the ball, and then he turned, and then
sees it bounce off the rim and not go in, and then puts his arm up and whistles the foul. I didn't think it was a foul.
No.
And I think especially at that point in the game, it's not a foul. Marcus Smart played really good defense. Marcus Smart is a really good defender.
Yeah.
And he played fantastic defense on Jimmy Butler down the stretch of that game. The possession before that, he forced a turnover.
Yeah.
Got the ball back with Boston. I thought it was a good contest. He barely clipped the right elbow. Jimmy Butler, if you flick his elbow a little bit on a shot, that shouldn't be enough to make him, to totally alter the shot to the point where he clanks it off the front rim. That's a tough one to swallow for Boston because you said it, like they're having a really good season. Going into the All-Star break, they build up. They had won like 10 of their last 11 going into that game, and they're just really on a roll right now, playing their best basketball of the season, and they're not even fully healthy, with Avery Bradley still out, and they just got Jay Crowder back. Jaylen Brown is injured. That would have been a big win for them on the road with sort of a depleted roster against not a great team in Chicago, but a team with
a playoff contending team. Definitely.
Yeah, and a team with an first or second team All-NBA caliber player in Jimmy Butler. Probably second team in my opinion this year. But Jimmy Butler's a stud, a top 10 player in the league. He's going to start the All-Star game, and they played a really good game against him and against the Bulls in general. And that's a tough one to swallow, to have it kind of taken away from you.
Atlanta's kind of, from a basketball perspective, taken off and set their expectations from the 2015 season now and what you've seen out of the Hawks play, and just what are you expecting as a fan, really?
This year, probably second round and then out. I mean, the East.
The East is nice this
year. Better.
Yes.
Yeah, it's better. And I was looking at the standings yesterday. Cleveland would be like 4th in the East
In the
Or
West.
in the West, I
yes.
should say, yeah.
They would.
If they faded the 16 seed playoffs, regardless of conference, Cleveland will be the 4 seed, which speaks, I think, to just the strength of the West. But there's sort of that glut in the East of the top, 5 teams are all separated by, 5 games. It's very close. And even, 3 through 5, 2 through 5 is even closer. The Hawks, I just don't know if they'll have enough this year. Cleveland, obviously, I would bet almost anything that they'd make the finals. Boston, Toronto, I think, are the next 2 best teams in the East. Although right now, Washington is certainly, you could make the argument, the second best team in the East, or even the first. Cleveland struggled recently.
Yeah.
But as far as the Hawks go, with all these teams making moves, Cleveland acquired Kyle Korver. Boston has all the assets in the world. Toronto just got Serge Ibaka. Are the Hawks going to be willing to add a piece like that? Because no matter what they say, they have to know in the back of their minds that they're not going to contend with Cleveland with this team right now. As good as they are, they're just not good enough. They don't have enough firepower. I mean, Paul Millsap is a great player, the most underrated player in the league, in my opinion. But if he's the best player in your team, I don't know how good you can be.
I mean, you've talked about these. I mean, the Hawks are a prime example of a team in the East that's solid, but just can't make the next step to make it to the NBA Finals. Where, I mean, it seems like Cleveland's going every year, or whatever team LeBron is on is going every year. And same in the West. I mean, you have the Warriors, you have the Spurs. I mean, whenever Kevin Durant was in Oklahoma City 5 years ago, they made it to the finals. But do you see another team ever really emerging to take over that spot and control their own destiny and go to the finals? Because right now I feel like the East is way too top heavy with the Cavs, and the West is way too top heavy with the Warriors. So for the foreseeable future, I just feel like it's going to be Warriors Cavs for the next 3 years, or as long as those players are still on that team.
Yeah, I think the Warriors are a lock. I mean, they won 73 games last year, and they're better this year.
Yeah.
They're blowing teams out. They've got 8 wins by 30 or more, which is 3 off of an NBA record set by the 71 Bucks. The East is interesting because, for the Hawks, the case for keeping it together and the case for adding that one more guy is what's happening in Cleveland right now with Kevin Love being injured. LeBron's leading the league in minutes. Kyrie Irving is an all-star, and deservedly so, but not having his best year. He's not, in my opinion, one of the best 3 or 4 point guards in the East. So the case is that Cleveland, if they're going to wear down, this is probably the year they're going to wear down. With Love out and LeBron playing so many minutes, you need him healthy in the playoffs, and you need him at 100% and fresh. And at this, I mean, if he keeps playing this many minutes, he's not going to be.
Right.
So, there's a chance that one of these Eastern Conference teams, a Toronto or a Boston or maybe an Atlanta or a Washington, can sneak in there, and then if they're healthy and things break the right way for them in the playoffs, maybe they squeak out a 7-game series against the Cavs. I think it's unlikely. I think the Cavs are still going to make it.
Right.
But I mean, this would be LeBron's 7th straight finals that he's made. That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And the odds of him making it to the finals decrease more every year because the stretch, it's more and more improbable that it'll add to his streak. So we saw it, I think, with the 2011 Dallas Mavericks. They sort of slipped through the cracks in the playoffs. Things broke their way. They took advantage of some injuries, and they took advantage of LeBron being in his first year with the Heat, and they won the title. So there's always that case to be made. Who can be the 2011 Dallas Mavericks? And I think this year there's a strong chance that someone is that team.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will happen, but I think the chances are higher.
I'm really intrigued to see this Sunday, Western Conference All-Stars, Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook are going to be teammates again. A week removed from their epic affair back in Oklahoma City. How do you think they're going to play together, or do you even think they're going to be on the floor at the same time? I mean, that's entirely up to Steve Kerr, the Warriors head coach. How do you think that whole thing's going to play out with them coming together?
Yeah, well, Steve Kerr can play this one of a few different ways. He can sort of just go the safe route and not put them on the floor together.
Yep.
He can sort of just play it normally and just do what he would normally do, put the beef aside and play it as though he were coaching the All-Star game regularly. Or he can kind of lean into it, and he can be like, hey, Russ, you're in, and I'm going to put you out there with Steph, KD, Clay, and Draymond.
Yeah.
Put the 4 Warriors and Russell out there. That, I mean, obviously that would be the most entertaining outcome.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone wants to see that.
Yes.
Russ and the 4 Warriors, like, that's must-watch TV.
Yeah.
No matter who they're playing against, they could play against, like, some preschoolers, and I would still watch that. just to see, like, because Russ is, like, he's so petty, and it's in the best way. Like, the way he just trolls Durant, and just he acts like he doesn't know. Like when the media asks him about it, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
He obviously does.
He knows,
and it's so great. It's so great. It's such a great storyline. Durant is sort of on the. He's kind of been saying like, I'm tired of talking about it. Like it's not a thing, and I believe him a little bit. But I just wonder who's going to extend the olive branch. Who's it going to be that goes to the other guy and says, hey, look, man, like, we should get over this. Like, let's bury the hatchet. I think it has to be Durant.
Yeah.
And say, like, look, man, I'm sorry. Like, apologize for what happened. Sit down, talk it out. But I don't know that either is going to be willing to do that this early. I think it's going to be, like, another couple of years before that happens.
Back charity-wise and stuff. So do you feel like the fans actually hate him in Oklahoma City? Plus, in addition to this question, do you feel like Kevin Durant will go back to OKC after a few years with the Warriors?
That's the interesting question because LeBron kind of set that precedent when he went to Miami for 4 years.
And he's only got a 2-year deal, and he can opt out after his first year.
Yeah, and
so he's not locked in Golden State by any means.
Yeah, I think he'll play out at least one more contract with the Warriors. But yeah, I think the fans are just mad at him. Like I don't think they have like a deep-seated hatred for him because they can't because he's the greatest player in franchise history. And he made that team. I mean, he's what brought that team to relevance.
He brought them from Seattle to Oklahoma City, built them up, took them to a finals. He did everything for this team, and now I think Russell Westbrook obviously had a large part in that, but whenever they were building up, Kevin Durant was the guy and has always been the guy.
Yeah, he was the first guy there of that core that they had, that core 4, which, by the way, is one of the greatest what-if stories in NBA history with Harden, Westbrook, and Durant, and Ibaka on the same team.
Yeah.
What could have been
all 4 of those guys are on different teams now. That's
I know.
Ridiculous.
And what's interesting is 3 of them are like top 5 candidates for MVP this year. Like, and it's just really fascinating. They should make a documentary about that at some point. But yeah, I don't think the fans hate him. I think they just are really extremely pissed off at him. I think. And that's understandable. I mean, they became so attached to him, and he did so much for the team and the franchise. Like. They have reason. I mean that would break your heart, and I don't think I didn't have a problem with Durant leaving. Like I thought it's a good business decision. It's a good basketball decision.
Right.
But from a fan's perspective, like if Chipper Jones had left the Braves in the middle of his career, I'd probably be pretty mad at Chipper Jones. Yeah. But it happens. It's just he made a good decision for himself. So I don't think you can really fault the guy, but I can definitely understand if you were so attached to the guy for so long, how you could be upset at him.
Yeah, I mean, think about it this way. You said you don't have a problem with KD leaving. I didn't have a problem either. And if you think about it, so in every other profession, whenever you're doing well at your job and you have a job promotion, you can leave and go to a different city. It's seen as a good thing. But in professional sports, when you're doing well with the team and you have this opportunity to go to a better team, it's like you're being looked down on. You're the villain because you're not staying loyal. So, I mean, that in my opinion is kind of the messed up part because Kevin Durant is a great player, obviously, and he's able to go take his talents to Golden State and play with other great players like Steph, Clay, Draymond, all those guys, and win 73 games in a season. But I mean, people get mad at him because he went to a better team and such. Ben Ladner here in the studio with me today. Thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Where can we follow you on Twitter? And let us know.
At @BLadner_, BLADNER_. Tweet mostly about NBA and a little IU basketball.
Yeah.
Too.
So if you liked his NBA knowledge, definitely follow him on Twitter for that. And then also, when's the next IU basketball game you're going to broadcast?
Let's see. I think I have the Ohio State game at Ohio State. I think that's my last IU game for the regular season, and then Josh Eastern and I are doing the Big Ten tournament.
There you go. And DC.
Yeah, which we may have to switch up our flight schedules for.
Yeah, I have not booked my flight for that yet, so...
I've got one Wednesday night. I might have to push it early.
You might have to push it. Yep. Yeah, unfortunately. Man, they have just really sucked the past couple of days, so...
It has not been great.
No, it hasn't. Well, Ben, thanks for joining me, man. Really appreciate it. Had a good time. And, this is AM Sports Talk with ZP. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.